It is week 9 of the Texas high school football season. There are 17 total weeks. So basically, if you want to talk about the regular season, we're almost done. There's only 11 weeks of the regular season. But if you expand that out to the full length of the 17-week Texas high school football season, the 17th week, of course, being state week, we're basically we are halfway done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are actually at the halfway point, not just the regular season halfway point. So we wanted to go back and forth and talk about some of the best games that we've seen thus far. Some of them will be college football games. Some of them will be high school games. But we can start off, I think, collectively with the game that we saw this weekend.
Yeah. We, if you don't know or didn't see our Twitter post, we went over to Fort Worth this weekend, and we got to see the TCU and Oklahoma State game, which was already such a highly rated matchup going into the game because both teams were ranked, I think, in the top 15. I don't remember exactly what team was ranked above who or whatever, but both teams were essentially in the top 15, and it went into double overtime, which was, we couldn't have asked for a better game to go see in person. To me, there was one point in the game, and it was early on in the game, and this was just after Spencer Sanders' second rushing touchdown, so that put Oklahoma State up 14-0 over TCU. And I looked at you, and I was like, dude, this might be over.
It was like is this going to get bad? As you also said, right before the game started, you go, I wonder what Spencer Sanders we're going to get. And it was like, I don't know. And it almost didn't even seem, for the first part of the game, it was like every other play was a different Spencer Sanders. Like,
it's because it's so hackle and jive with him. I mean, you can, at one game he'll look fantastic. He'll throw 5 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, and then the next he'll throw 3 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions. It kind of just goes game by game, even play by play, like you said. So we were like, I don't know which one we're going to get. Well, he turned on the Jets really quickly in that game, and he showed out his speed, and Oklahoma State was up to a 14-0 start early in the first quarter, and I didn't think TCU was going to be able to come back from that just because they hadn't really in the season. But sure enough, they did. I think they took their first lead going into – it was already in overtime because they tied it up towards the end to push the game into overtime.
Right.
So they literally took their first lead in the entire game. TCU did in overtime. Which made it so cool. And they ended up pulling out the win there. But it was a fantastic game to see in person. The weather was not super bad. It was about probably low 80s. We sat in the sun for most of it, so we got a little bit of sun to us. Yeah. A little bit red. But other than that, I mean, it was a fantastic way to spend a Saturday.
Oh, yeah. That's one of those games where you're hoping... We hyped it up so much in our heads. We're like, this could be the Big 12 champion. Like, a preview of the Big 12 championship game. This is an outstanding quarterback matchup. Like, these two teams pair up well together. It was a, 2:30 kick, so it's like perfect football in the fall. And we were really excited. And when a game like that lives up to the expectation that you were holding in your brain, it was like we left that going... That's exactly what we were looking for. Yeah. That's exactly what we wanted out of that game. And hopefully we get to see part 2 of that game with TCU in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, and before we move on, I think the Big 12 is so up in the air, which is super exciting right now because you just don't know between TCU, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Texas. I mean, any one of those teams, Texas Tech, throw them in the mix. Any one of those teams could potentially play for a Big 12 championship, which is super exciting.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
It was big time for the Frogs.
Yes, big time win for the Frogs.
So that was really exciting. I'm going to throw it down to the next game that so far for me has continued to stick out in my mind as one of the best games I've seen was back in week 1, actually. Crazy enough to say, when myself, Ish, Step, Jorts, David Hinojosa, who we're going to talk to in a little bit, we were all there in the 2-1-0. Gabe Brooks was there, and we went to the triple header at the Alamo Dome, the KSAC Classic, which was just unbelievable. I mean, all 3 of those games were insanely amazing. Ish and I did not stay for the last one on the day, which was just as good. That was Steele and Brennan, I think. But we did go to Johnson and Judson, and that was a banger. We'll talk a lot about San Antonio Johnson coming up in a little bit. We'll talk about both those teams coming up in a little bit, but Johnson ended up losing 43-46, but it was a great coaching matchup with Mark Soto and TP Miller. Obviously, Miller, that was his mentor forever, and so to get to see them go off, and it was Soto's first game back at his alma mater as the head coach in Judson, and that's where we got on the Ty Hawkins train, which is Johnson's sophomore quarterback. I won't ruin it all, but that game was outstanding. If I had to put my finger on like the best high school game I've seen thus far in the year, it actually happened that Saturday in week 1, which is crazy to think about.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's wild. I'll give you another one. I'll give you another triple overtime at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah,
however, this
dome.
one's in college.
Handing out
This
doves.
one's in college. Yeah, I always get this mixed up. It was week 1 of the season, but it was my second college game of the season because I went to
week 0.
I went to UTEP and UNT week 0. So this was week 1 of the season. Houston comes into the Alamo Dome, goes into triple overtime to play UTSA. UTSA was up like 21-7 at one point, so it was like, dang, UTSA might pull this out over a team that's moving to the Big 12 eventually, and Houston ended up coming back. The game went into triple overtime. What is it with the Alamo Dome and triple
I don't know,
man? But that it's an if you have not been to the Alamo Dome for a high school game or a college game, get down there because the atmosphere is just electric, and it's got to be hard to play in there, you know. If you're like the home team, I mean, it's just so loud in there. But yeah, good games happen in the Alamo Dome. So
yeah, the other thing that I love that the Dome does, and this was definitely not the case when y'all were there for the Houston game, but for the high school games, they will put up a curtain on the top level, so if they're not selling tickets there, it makes it look like it's full.
Yeah.
Instead of leaving it to where like, oh, we're not selling tickets, but we're not going to allow people up there, but we're not going to block it off. Then it's like, okay, when you're taking pictures from the press box and stuff, then it's like, oh, well, it doesn't really look that full, but they block it off to where it's a black curtain, so it looks like it's full. Love that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And the one other game that I want to mention, another game that went into overtime. We tend to like overtime around here. In week 2, Ish and I saw Wichita Falls, Hershey, and Brock. That one ended up going into overtime. Hershey ended up winning it 37-30, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, 37-30. That one was an absolute blast. You want to talk about perfect weather that day too.
Yeah, you got some good pictures at the game too, didn't you?
Yes.
Didn't you take some pictures at the game and videos? And
a lot of D1 recruits on that Hershey team. They've got the 2 kids. One of them's committed to USC, so that was cool. But yeah, those are probably the top 3 best games that I've seen so far. Like halfway through the season, we kind of wanted to do like a mid-season update.
Yeah, those are my 2 college games. If I were to pick a third, I think this one might be a little underrated, but I really liked going to Frisco Wakeland and Frisco Lone Star just because I think that Lone Star all year we thought they were going to be really good. You know, we thought they were going to be at the top of the district, and then they come out and lost pretty big time to Wakeland. Wakeland looked really, really good. That one was at the Star, so that one did not go into overtime, but it was still a really good game because I think it was just an unexpected outcome for Wakeland to win that game. So
well, and I was pumped for you on that one to, like you said, get a pulse on Lone Star because we didn't really have a pulse on either, because Wakeland made the unbelievable run last year. You remember they knocked off Highland Park in the area round of the playoffs, so it was kind of like, as when I remember you asking like, which game do you like? You had 2 games, and I was like, go to that one because those are like 2 of the teams that can kind of start sneaking up on. Lone Star's always good, but especially Wakeland, I was like, this would be a really good game to get a pulse on, like, okay, what are we looking at going forward?
Right, they seem to turn on the Jets come playoff time, so yeah, for sure.
So there you go. We wanted to do a little mid-season update of some of the best games that we've seen. We were excited. Obviously, we're getting into the best half of the year. I don't think anyone's going to argue, you know. But people look at it as 3 seasons, and this week, week 9, is literally the best week of high school football that we will have that's not in the playoffs. It's the best regular season week. I mean, there are games all over the place. So we'll put out the top 10 DCTF games to watch, and if make sure to go to TexanLive.com too, because we're broadcasting 81 different games, not all football games, a lot of playoff water polo and stuff too, but we have a ton of bangers on Texan Live this week, so TexanLive.com.
And if you don't know much about water polo, go watch some because it's a really fun sport to watch.
Cool.
There's constant energy, constant motion, which me personally, I like that.
Oh, yeah.
So go watch some water polo. It's really good.
Well, and you want to see like a a good level of athleticism.
Oh my gosh.
My God. I don't know how they do
touch
it.
the ground.
No.
They swim the whole time, and I love swimming, but I need to be touching the ground at some parts because I don't have the capacity to stay
Sucking
alive.
land, man.
I know.